Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Radha.
Krishna, Radha.
Hare Krishna, Lokadhyaksa and Vidarbhasuta Prabhus. I'm so excited that we're getting to have you guys on the GBC SBT channel. I've been waiting for this day eagerly. It's interesting. We have like a Washington, D.C. representation here.
I know.
So thank you so much for joining us. So to our viewers, we're in our Celebrating Chaitanya Charitamrita series, and we're talking to Lokadhyaksa and Vidarbhasuta, Prabhus who hail from, who currently live in America, but they're right now in in India. And they are going to be taking us on another journey through the CC about Prasadam. So to everyone out there, if you can just kindly, click that share button, just invite friends to join this wonderful discussion that we're having. 5 weeks of incredible nectar, all types of subject matters, from theology to Leela to Parikrama, etc. There's something for everyone. Into the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So without much ado, I would like to invite Lokadhyaksa and Vidarbhasuta to just say a little bit about themselves and what their services are, and just to kind of dive into the nectar for which they're famous for distributing. So with that, thank you so much.
Thank you, Anuradha. It's such an honor, and we're so grateful to you for inviting us on this channel. Both Lokadhyaksa and myself, we have been in the DC metro area for the last 25 years. Can you hear us okay, Anuradha? So we've been in the DC metro area for the last 25 years, and we've engaged primarily in book distribution.
Hatta preaching, college preaching, and I guess serving in whatever way we can.
So it's just really wonderful for us to be here. So
we are disciples of His Holiness Mukunda Goswami, and we work under the direction of His Grace Vaisheshika Prabhu for book distribution.
So with that, we'll start our presentation for today, which is Prasadam from Ananda Maya to Ananda Maya, right? So can we just give us a minute? Where's
Yeah, it's a title that flashed through our mind when we are just going through Chaitanya Charitamrita, and a very fascinating book to read. And we felt that this is something that deeply resonates with us. This journey, Ananda Maya to Ananda Maya, deeply resonates with our own journey.
So actually, just to start off, we just wanted to share a little personal story about how we actually found the devotees. And we were just newly married 25 years ago, right on the DC Mall. I was completely new to the country. And we were, visiting, the DC Mall for 4th of July. And all of a sudden, we were just taking just lying down on the green grass, and somebody came over and said, guess what, they're distributing free pakoras there. And so then we...
So we rushed to that site at the speed of wind, and we found beautiful devotees who were distributing pakoras and other prasadam. So that was like a bonus.
It was a bonus. And then not just that, then they invited us like, oh, we have a temple. Why don't you guys come over? And I don't remember if we went the next week or a couple of weeks later, but we went to the temple. I was on a Saturday. I remember that. Saturday afternoon. And it was amazing. There was
just so happened that it was lunchtime, because we didn't plan it that way. We had no expectation.
Yeah, we didn't even know that. But when we went there, first of all, there was nobody there in the temple. Everyone had, I think, gone off for some Rath Yatra celebration. So the temple was empty. And there was like a table, like a picnic table, which was just all laid out with prasadam. And, both of us just looked at each other and was like, gosh, this is a great place.
And then we had to find out whether it's for taking or it was for some other purpose. So finally we found Rasapriya, I think.
Yeah.
And
she said, oh yeah, go ahead. And so, and at that point, I just want to give a little, like a background information about myself, that I kind of prided myself on being a good cook. And so I was newly married, 14 days into the country or something. No, a couple of months. Few months. And so I used to cook, I brought with me like a whole stack of cookbooks, and I would just continuously keep finding new recipes and keep cooking. But when I ate the prasadam, and at that time I didn't know that it was prasadam, but when I ate the lunch there, I was blown over. And I thought, it was very humbling for me, because I thought, what is going on here? Like, I'm taking so much effort to cook, and this is just, it tastes so different. And so I remember approaching Rasapriya and asking her, it's like, what's going on? And she told me, she said, yeah, because this is being cooked with devotion for Krishna and it's being offered. And so I just took it in, not quite understanding what she was talking about. It's like, okay, but the distinction between what I was cooking and what I tasted at the temple that day was quite obvious.
And I guess for me, it was because I was a staunch atheist at that time, and I had no kind of inclination to towards Krishna or God. And for me, but I was very attracted to that. I got instantly attracted to that prasadam, the fragrance and the sight, the beautiful
Much more than what I was cooking at home, right?
Much more. And I said, this is a great place. We need to come here every Saturday. That was the Ananda Maya consciousness of mine coming to the forefront.
So, while we were reading an article written by Shisha Prabhu, we came across the etymological meaning of the word food, which is what we say, right? Oh, that was great food. And
I guess this is what we said. This is great food. We should come here every Saturday.
Exactly. And he was saying that how there is the origins of this word is actually pre-Germanic, Gothic, and it means fodanes.
Fodanes, which means the fodanes comes from the root word fod, F-O-D, which means something like to tend, to keep, pasture, to protect. It applies to basically farm animals like sheep or cow. You fod them or feed them.
Yeah, and he gives us very nice visual imagery. He said it's almost like, the sheep sort of like jostling with each other to get some, fodder. And that's kind of what, we have also in the modern world. We have sort of found ourselves in this situation where the process of eating has been secularized, right? And we've become so disconnected from this entire process of eating, so much so that there was a research that was done where they found that there was a significant number of people, kids especially, who thought that, no, not just kids actually, it was adults as well, who thought that chocolate milk actually comes from brown cows.
Wow.
So,
and in the 1970s, there was a research done, and probably the numbers have probably multiplied many times by now. And they found that the amount the Americans spent on fast food in 2000 was more than $110 billion. And this was way more than Americans spent on higher education, personal computers, hardware, new cars, everything combined. And even that was not compared to the amount spent on fast food. So this is quite shocking, because this is how the food has been turned into fast food. Like you jostle, you just get it and run.
Instant, right?
Instant.
Yeah, and there's another article on Huffington Post where it talks about how our food has been robbed of its sacredness. And it has been, beaten into this uniformity of packaged snacks, right? And the only criteria for eating is just efficiency. And so as a result of that, we see that so much gets taken away or stripped away in that experience. Our earth gets depleted, our environment gets affected, our relationship with our neighbors, gets also affected. And we just live in a world where we are disconnected.
Yeah, because there's so much that is connected with food, how we relate to ourselves, how we relate to our family members, how we relate to the society, and so many rituals and so many sacredness that is built into the food that has been taken away in the name of efficiency, in the name of packaging,
and fast,
and in industrialization.
Yeah. However, what we both found very interesting, this actually started when we saw that our son, who's now in college, is graduating soon. He was taking a lot of interest in watching food videos.
And then many times when we would call him on the phone, he'd say, today I watched this food video by BBC.
Yeah, and we're like, why? And then we found out that actually it's a latest trend where the millennials actually, they eat up these YouTube food videos and Netflix food videos. And there was a research that was done, an analysis, and they found that.
And this was done by Millward Brown Digital and Firefly. They did an analysis, and they found that there's a sudden uptick in the consumption of these food videos on YouTube and other social media channels. Has grown up by more than 120%, and bulk of it is driven by the millennials. 280% growth in the food channel subscriptions.
So we see that that there is such an interest, even though we don't have time to cook, we don't have time to eat, right? We're just eating on the go in the car, and yet there is a draw. There's such a strong draw that even people who never cook and who have no plans of cooking, they still find themselves glued to the YouTube watching food videos. So why? So that's where this idea of Annamaya comes into picture, that food is so important for us, and it's not just an urge. It's not just something that we take just to satisfy our physical hunger.
Yeah, just for our viewers, Annamaya is the Vedas analyze our consciousness in terms of 5 coverings or 5 levels, and Annamaya is the basic level where consciousness is primarily preoccupied. That's the meaning of word Maya, means preoccupied or immersed in. So the primary consciousness is immersed in food, and then higher than and then after that is survival and engaging our mind and intelligence, and finally the highest level is Ananda Maya, which means one is fully absorbed in the spiritual consciousness, union with the divine.
And hence our title, Annamaya to Ananda Maya. And it's so amazing that, this, just to illustrate the significance of our eating process, in the Vedic culture, a person's social and spiritual status was actually determined by what he ate. So, you have people who are, for example, the Chandalas, who were known because they would eat dogs.
And Vedas would coin somebody who's like this. This is the definition: somebody who eats meat, they are called lecha, and somebody who eats cow meat, they are called yavanas, and somebody who eats dog meat, they are called chandalas.
So you see that, that there is a whole spiritual hierarchy or social hierarchy which is based around your food and what you're eating. And
we find a parallel of that in this modern times also. This great chef and humanitarian, the name Jose Andres, he was Time Magazine's, twice he was selected the 100 most influential people on the Time Magazine's list.
And he also came up. I think he was this person who started the beef steak, the restaurant, whatever it's,
the vegan restaurant. Yeah. He was also nominated for Nobel Peace Prize in
So he says that food is what we do from the moment we are born to the moment we die. It's part of our DNA. I believe in the power of food to tell the story of who we are as a people and as a society.
So he goes on to say that what we have at the end of our fork has a great impact on us as a society, a great impact on us as the whole planet. And he puts a lot of emphasis on bringing that out in his talks and his presentations.
Yeah, and it's we can see that actually that so much of what we do, it revolves around this process of eating. And of course, we're going to dive a lot deeper into this eating and what it does to us, even at the deepest level of who we are. But suffice it is to say that this process of eating has very serious ramifications on our social, political, economic, and as well as environmental condition of the world. Now, let's move a little bit off this point about how it impacts the world, and let's now look into what is its impact on us. And so, why is it that the millennials are so drawn to watching YouTube videos, even though they don't cook? And when interviewed and when spoken to, they talk about this quality of emotional satiation. And we do know that when people are kind of depressed or when people are feeling empty, sometimes they just get on this binge eating, right? So it seems like maybe there is something to do, there is a connection between food and a sense of emotional well-being. Now, in Ayurveda, this is actually acknowledged that eating food is an experience of rasa. So the first tissue that food actually gets transformed into is called rasa, ahara rasa. And then from that point on, that ahara rasa then gets transformed into various other tissues like rakta dhatu and mamsa dhatu and meda dhatu and all those. And finally it becomes ojas.
So which is basically blood, muscles, bones. And finally ojas, which is our vitality and our energy, the finer realm of our consciousness. Is basically food permeates that realm.
And so and not just that, this is just at the physical level, but also at a mental level, at an emotional level. This aharas, the food we intake, and not just what we intake, but how we intake, the consciousness with which we intake food actually also transforms into our emotions, into our thoughts and personality. And even though this might sound like a very esoteric point, but actually there is a lot of research done about how we have actually a second brain in our gut, and that how 90% I think of our serotonin is actually produced in the gut. So there is a very deep connection between the food that we eat and our emotions and our thoughts and our personality. Now here is something that I personally found very, very striking, very interesting when I first came across it, which is that this rasa dhatu or rasa tissue has its origin in the heart. And it is described that if this channel of rasa gets depleted, then one can even die. So this is how important it is to understand this connection between this physical intake of food and this experience of rasa. And as we were talking, Lola and I, we were just discussing this the other day, that this is maybe one reason why the impersonalists, because they deny all forms of rasa or taste, right? Because they are they really don't want to acknowledge that it's neti. So that's why even after they have attained this platform of Brahman or liberation, they're unable to stay there because they don't get they have no experience of this rasa, and so they fall down.
And this is, I guess, connecting this inability to taste rasa, or without tasting rasa, we are not able to stand in any position. Many times we fall down, or we just get bored with that particular situation. And this is, Prabhupada explains that in the Bhagavatam and the prayers of the demigods in the 10th canto. It says that ye anyar vindaksha vimukta maninas tvayasta bhava avishuddha buddhaya aruya krichena param padam tata patanti tutu anadita yushvadangraya. That basically primarily because without having this relationship of rasa with your lotus feet Krishna, people who just try to avoid that, they are not able to stay in that Brahman realm for too long. So this is from Bhagavatam 10th canto, 2nd chapter, 32. So because as we come across this topic of rasa, Prabhupada has spoken so much about it in all his writings, and he talks about this specifically in the Nectar of Devotion, where he brings out this concept of difference between mundane rasa, which he calls as jada rasa, and the transcendental rasa, which he calls as Ananda Chinmaya rasa.
Yeah, because even though there is, we understand that the reason why the millennials or even people in general, they're so addicted to watching these food videos is because they want to experience rasa. But rasa in the material world, like you're saying, is so limited, right? And so once you experience a certain rasa, then one very quickly actually begins to feel satiated. And then one wants to jump to something else, or one also fluctuates, like Prabhupada says, this fluctuates between bhoga and tyaga, which means enjoyment and renunciation. And so we go back and forth between these two things. And so so that's the reason for that, is because we as spiritual beings are really not meant to enjoy this jara rasa, which is rasa that exists in the material realm.
And therefore Lord Chaitanya, realizing that everybody is actually hankering to taste this rasa, and in the absence of this higher rasa, people will fall down to lower rasa. Therefore Lord Chaitanya himself appears to not only taste this highest rasa himself, but to distribute it to everyone. So like the verse about Lord Chaitanya that Rupa Goswami composed, Samarpaitum Unnata Ujjvala Rasam, that you appeared to distribute widely this Unnata Ujjvala Rasam, this highest mellows of transcendental enjoyment. You came to share that, and this Ananda Chinmaya Rasa.
Yeah, and Prabhupada also talks about how every living entity is Ananda Maya Bhyasat, right? Every living entity is looking for this enjoyment, for this pleasure, and that's what the impersonalist completely denies. And so this is another.
This is a beautiful verse in the CC Adi Leela 4th chapter, Confidential Reasons for Lord Chaitanya's Appearance, 15th and 16th, and it says, Prema rasa niryasa korite aswadana ragamarga bhakti loke korite pracharana Rasika Shekhara Krishna Parama Karuna E Dui Hetu Hoite Ichara Udgama. The Lord's desire to appear was born from two reasons. The Lord wanted to taste the sweet essence of the mellows of love of God, and he wanted to propagate devotional service in the world on the platform of spontaneous attraction. Thus he is known as supremely jubilant and as the most merciful of all. So when we came across this verse, the first few words in the first line really struck chord with our presentation today. It says Prema Rasa Niryasa. Niryasa means the essence. And Lord Chaitanya, he came to Aswadana, which means to taste, and then to share it with everybody else. Loke Karite Pracharana. And this Prema Ras, which is the conjugal mellows of Goloka, Lord Chaitanya primarily tasted that and distributed that by two primary means, which is chanting of the holy names and also the prasadam, accepting prasadam and distributing it at a wide level.
So then, of course, so this is, we've talked about, the desire for mundane rasa that drives us, to this food, which is such a basic urge in every living entity. And, you see that with babies, especially, right? When they first start crawling, or even before that, you give something to them. I still remember when Nimai was little and you would just put a little honey and just immediately they just latch onto it because it's such a basic urge. So we see that how this urge is so basic. At the same time, we see that it obviously doesn't satisfy us. So we're talking about spiritual rasa and this aspect of prasadam. So what is prasadam? Prasadam is the act of taking these material ingredients and offering it first, cooking it in love and devotion, and then offering it to Krishna, and then accepting the remnants as prasad, which literally means mercy. Now, for the practitioners of bhakti, we may say, yeah, of course, everybody loves prasadam. But sometimes, when we talk to people or when people hear about it, there could be a question that, like, he is the source of everything. The supreme absolute truth is the source of everything. And generally, we go to the temples or to the churches and we say, please, give us...
To ask for something.
To ask for something, or to also give us our daily bread, right? So he is the one who's providing us our bread. So what is this whole idea of, feeding him and cooking for him?
Is it like that, bringing him down to like a human level?
So that's Bhaktivinoda Thakur actually addresses that in one of his articles that, we were really struck by the way Bhaktivinoda Thakur speaks about it. And so we'll try to find little portions that we can read from this, and then we'll continue. So he says that the rationalist states that God is infinite and without wants, and consequently it is foolish to offer eatables to such a being. It is sacrilege to offer created things to the Creator and thereby degrade the divinity of God, treating him as a human being. These are reasonable arguments indeed, and one who has heard them will certainly be inclined to tell others, down with Mahaprasad.
These conclusions, which may appear reasonable, are dry and destructive. They tend to separate us from all connection in worshipping God. When you say that the infinite wants nothing, you forbid all contemplation and prayer.
So then Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that, all right, at this point, the rationalist takes one step closer and he says, all right, even though God doesn't really need all that, but it's all right. It's just for the improvement of the soul. The God actually doesn't really want it at all. So then Bhaktivinoda Thakur continues and he says that the progressive rationalist has admitted a very broad principle in theology. Whatever we do towards God is for our own benefit and not for the benefit of God, who is not in want of anything. However, the rationalist is a rationalist still and will continue to be so as long as he seeks self-interest. And this view, however, smells of utilitarianism and can never be theism. So he's making this point that, it's, even though it's hard for us to get, wrap our head around this, that how can he be in want?
Yeah.
But that's the idea of a rationalist. So one has to go past this idea of seeing this from the vision of a rationalist. And then this is a beautiful paragraph.
It brings in the point of love, that how this is love goes beyond reason and rationale. And he says that
reason.
Yeah, he says reason says one thing, but love prescribes the opposite. Reason tells me that God has no sorrow, but love sees God in tears for his sons who are misled to evil. Reason tells me that the strict laws of God reward and punish me in a cold manner, but love reveals that God slackens his laws to the repentant soul.
Reason tells me that with all his improvements, man will never touch God. But love preaches that on the conversion of a soul into a state of spiritual womanhood, God, unconditioned as he is, accepts an eternal marriage with the liberated soul. And this goes on, that how the Supreme Lord, even though from the platform of intellect and reason, we may not be able to understand how and why the Supreme Lord would even want food cooked by us, and what to speak of, not just want, but he is dependent. Mother Yashoda thinks that if she doesn't feed Krishna, Krishna will die. And Krishna, he just for a little bit of buttermilk, he dances to the tune of the gopis, right? So,
as a father in his amusements he's building his arguments. As a father in his amusements with his young children, God is spreading all sorts of delicious food all over the earth and expecting his sons to gather them for their own benefit. But the loving children, out of their holy and unmixed love, gather all the scattered blessings and with strong feelings of love, regardless of reason, offer all the blessings to the Father, whom they love more than their lives.
So this goes on. So we won't, where is it? So this is, this kind of shows that, we are offering, this aspect of offering is, even though at one level we could say it is for our own purification, but it's more than that. It is really for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord, who does hanker for that love. And he says that in the Bhagavad Gita, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam. He says, if someone offers it to me, I will accept it. And it's not just that he accepts it.
He actually eats it. He says, Asnami Pratatmana, that the word Asnami, which is actually, I eat that. And he eats that with great relish. And this is something very unique to this Bhakti philosophy, is the exchange of rasa. This is what Lord Chaitanya came to share.
So now, the Supreme Lord, eats the food that we have offered, even though we may not be able to see it. When we offer it, it may seem that the plate is untouched, but of course we understand that Krishna has accepted it.
We see that in the Madhavinda Puri's pastime that is described in the Madhya Leela, where the Gopal deity appears in Govardhan and he requests Madhavinda Puri to install him. And in the installation festival, Madhavinda Puri organizes, with the help of all the villagers, they offer mounts and mounts of prasadam to Gopal deity. And Madhavinda Puri is described as seeing that Gopal actually eats all of that food, and then he replaces all of that food back on the plate. And this is an experience that Madhavinda Puri personally sees, that is described. So which is quite striking, that how Krishna actually eats that food, and then out of his kindness.
And it's called Badhaila.
Badhaila.
Right, Badhaila, which means that it actually increases.
Yeah.
It's a very mystical thing that happens. Now, there's another amazing thing that happens, is that, we get purified. Yes, Krishna feels a lot of happiness and pleasure. Yes, but there is something to the aspect of eating food together. One of the primary goal of bhakti is to develop or revive our dormant love for God, for Krishna, right? And so and again, there are studies over studies that show that when you break bread together, that actually increases people's trust and cooperation. And there is something to be said about when you're eating the same food as your loved ones, then it increases. I remember, in my in-laws, like your family.
Yeah.
For Diwali, I remember still people would sit on the same plate, right?
They would eat from the same plate.
They would eat from the same
like 3 or 4 generations side. Like my father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather when he was alive.
They would all sit together.
And Nimai, at some point when he was able to eat, we would all sit together in the same plate.
Same plate. And so, even though it may seem like a sweet thing to do, there is actually study that shows that actually sitting together and breaking bread together actually increases our loving connection with each other.
So this great social scientist, Ayelet Fishbach, teaches at the University of Chicago. She did a research, actually quite a few research. So in this particular research, she brought 2 groups of people together, and one group was to act as a manager, and the other group was to act as union representative. And they were negotiating a salary increase or a certain amount of salary. So what she did was she gave different foods and same food. So she gave sweets to the managers and salty snacks to the other group. And they found that it took them 7.3 rounds of negotiations to reach to some conclusion. And when she gave both the groups sweets, managers as well as the union reps sweets, then they were able to reach agreement much quicker. In just 3.5 rounds, they were able to reach an agreement.
So like half.
In half the round.
Half the round.
And she tried doing a reverse study. She gave them same color shirts, but that didn't really make any difference. When she had the same food, that made a big difference in their reaching an agreement.
And I guess we do know that, right? Intuitively, we do know that when we love someone, we always like to invite them for dinner. We want to sit with them and be able to eat and share that food, right? So it's a similar idea that, when we eat food that has been accepted by Krishna, that has been eaten by Krishna, and the food that has Krishna's saliva mixed in it, right?
Yeah.
So that actually creates this intimate bond of love, which is the very essence of yoga. is to connect. And so it becomes a very strong way in which devotees develop their love for Krishna. And this is actually described in this very, very beautiful section of Chaitanya Charitamrita, where this remnant of Krishna is described as Krishna's Fela. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, he wonders about it, and he says,
so this is a beautiful section in CC Antya Leela, chapter 16. And here Lord Chaitanya goes to Jagannath Puri temple, and then he honors the prasadam, and after eating the prasadam, he's in amazement. He's just glorifying, what is this? And he says, to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the prasadam tasted millions upon millions of times better than nectar, and thus he was fully satisfied. The tears flowed from his eyes.
Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu considered, where has such a taste in this prasadam come from? Certainly it is due to its having been touched by the nectar of Krishna's lips.
Understanding this, the Lord again said, only by great fortune may one come by a particle of remnants of food offered to the Lord.
Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, these are remnants of food that Krishna has eaten and thus turned to nectar with his lips. It surpasses heavenly nectar, and even such demigods as Lord Brahma find it difficult to obtain.
So this is a good sloka. Krishneraye bhukta shesha tara fela nama tara eka lava ipaya se bhagyavana. Remnants left by Krishna are called fela. Anyone who obtains even a small portion must be considered very fortunate.
One who is only ordinarily fortunate cannot obtain such mercy. Only persons who have the full mercy of Krishna can receive such remnants. I think we can just read the... he was just filled with ecstasy just by everyone's mind. Yeah, this is the part I wanted to read. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, these ingredients, such as sugar, camphor, black pepper, cardamom, cloves, butter, spices, and licorice, are all material. Everyone has tasted these material substances before. However, the Lord continued, in these ingredients there are extraordinary taste and uncommon fragrances. Just taste them and see the difference in the experience.
Apart from the taste, even the fragrance pleases the mind and makes one forget any other sweetness besides its own.
So, loudly chanting the holy names of Hari, all of them tasted the prasadam. As they tasted it, their minds became mad in the ecstasy of love. And I guess I could definitely attest to that. I didn't know any of this philosophy, but when I first tasted this prasadam, at Potomac Temple, I was just completely blown over. That how is it possible? And this actually happens to Lord Shiva and to Narada. So maybe
and even in this section of CC later on, it describes how Radharani and all the gopis who are considered the topmost devotees, they actually hanker for this fela from Krishna's lotus mouth, and they describe its glories.
So we'll tell a little story here about, this is one of my favorite stories about how one time Narada, the great transcendental space and devotee, he goes to Vaikuntha, and Lord Narayan is having his meal, and so he requests Lakshmi Devi to give him a little bit of this Mahaprasad, this little bit of fela from Lord Narayan's plate. And so Lakshmi Devi gives it to Narada, and as soon as Narada takes it and tastes it, he goes completely mad in ecstasy and he starts to dance around. And in that state of madness, he actually comes to the abode of Lord Shiva. And so when Lord Shiva sees him in that condition, he says, Narada, what's up with you? Why are you so happy? And he says, well, because I just got the Mahaprasad of Lord Krishna, Lord Narayan. And so then Lord Shiva gets a little piffed at that. And he says, oh, how come you're my brother? You're supposed to share this with me. How come you never, So then Narada looks around and he sees that there's a little piece of rice or, some remnants that is still stuck in his hand. And so then he gives it to Lord Shiva. And then when Lord Shiva takes that, then again Lord Shiva goes in a state of complete ecstasy and he starts to dance with his drum. And, and there's this big turmoil because both the brothers are now dancing wild. And then, of course, lo and behold, Parvati comes along. And she gets like, what's going on with the two of you? And they're like, oh, we just got some Mahaprasad. Now she's really, really upset. And she says, I am your wife and I'm your other half. And you just took it without sharing it with me. That's not fair. And then she walks away and she says, I'm going to meditate. And she meditates on Lord Krishna, on Lord Narayan, who then appears and benedicts her that in Jagannath Puri, whenever, this like pots and pots of bhoga will be offered to Lord Jagannath, the first person who gets that Mahaprasad would be Durga,
Vimla
Devi. So to this day, Lord Jagannath's Prasad is first offered to Vimla Devi.
And this is the magic of Krishna's fella.
Yeah, that it makes everyone go mad.
And I guess this is the whole connection between how Annamaya, and when we are just driven by food, but even unknowingly receiving food that has been touched by Krishna's lips, immediately transfers a person from being Annamaya to Ananda Maya, because it is Krishna's fella. And even gopis, they hanker for Krishna's fella, which is very rare. Sometimes we think of prasadam as just food, but reading CC, we can understand and appreciate the depth of benefit that is there in prasadam.
Actually, that is such a good point that you just made, because we think of Bhagavad Gita as a book for all sampradayas.
Yeah, the Bhagavad Gita is is described that Bhagavad Gita is accepted by all the sampradaya, which means both the Vaishnava and the impersonalist sampradaya, like the Shankar sampradaya, and the book for all the Vaishnava sampradaya, which is accepted, is Srimad Bhagavatam. The Bhagavad Puran is accepted by all the Vaishnava sampradayas, or which is the book of Tattva or Siddhanta. But for all the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, the book of Siddhanta or Tattva is the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And when you read Chaitanya Charitamrita, as in previous presentations we also saw beautiful listings of all the different preparations that are written by Kaviraj Goswami again and again and again.
Again and again. Like,
through Madhya and through Antya, so many descriptions, great descriptions. And
sometimes, like, I can tell you, like, when I would read this, I would wonder, like, why? He's spending so much time just talking about each dish.
Yeah.
And some of those dishes we've never heard. And yet, there has to be some Siddhantic significance to that.
Yeah,
right?
and as we relate to that, the purpose of Lord Chaitanya as it went, Prema Rasa Niryasa Karite Aswadana, that through chanting of the holy name, and then it occurred that, this is Prasadam distribution is a Siddhanta, this honoring Prasadam, preparing Prasadam, and distributing is a Siddhanta that Chaitanya Kaviraj Goswami is trying to present to us. And when we look in the outside world also, this whole concept, there's a concept of multimodal mental imagery, where in the cooking shows or in other places, people see a food item, but or hear about it, and it immediately inspires or triggers responses in their olfactory system, in all different parts of their brain. And it creates an imagery, an actual experience of being with that food. So Kaviraj Goswami is actually presenting all these food items and describing how to prepare them, like how Damayanti prepares different food items to help us fully immerse ourselves into this rasa aswadana.
Yeah, because I always love what Sachinandan Swami says, right? That he talks about being socialized. Like when you want to go to some place, you want to get socialized, and the way that people live. And a huge part of how people live is how people eat. So Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami is actually introducing us to this rich culture of food, of eating, which is such a deep hankering for every single person. And it's amazing. Like, I just wanted to add another point here. Like, just recently I was, my father just passed away, right? So we were in Assam, and the food that was being cooked was very kind of rich, and I generally tend to eat like simpler. So I actually one day, I was cooking every day for myself, and I was cooking very, very simple sabzi. So I would like take lauki or squash or something like that and just make it like super simple. So on this day there were a lot of people over, and I cooked and I offered and I took, and then there was some remnants left. And there was this two uncles of mine, who are used to like eating really, really, really rich and spicy food. Like I couldn't even imagine. And then later in the evening, I was told that they just really, really loved that sabzi that I had made, and they kept taking like seconds and thirds. And then when I met them, I was a little embarrassed because it was practically like boiled sabzi. There was nothing much to it. And they kept saying, it's like, that sabzi that you made had Hare Krishna written all over it. And I was thinking, now when we were working on this prasadam, I was thinking, there has to be something to it.
They tasted Krishna's fella.
Yeah, they tasted Krishna's fella. So in Chaitanya Charitamrita, there are 4 ways that we see how, this prasadam aswadana is being talked about. And each one is so much detail. And that's another thing that really grabs me, is that, there's the acquiring of bhoga, there is the distribution, there's the honoring, and there's the preparation and cooking.
So in terms of acquiring bhoga, we see that CC describes this wonderful pastime of Raghava Pandit, a great devotee of Lord Chaitanya, who walked when he had a big garden of coconut trees, and all different kinds of vegetables would grow in his own garden. But yet, whenever you'd find out that there was a better option available, then he would walk 20 miles personally. He'd not even send his own servants. He'd personally go 20 miles, 10 miles to acquire these sweeter coconuts, and he'd bring them. And he'd pay much. It describes the money in ganas and gandas, but I don't know the conversion rate, but from what I would understand, it was many times. You'd pay many times more for acquiring those coconuts. So, and then one time what happened was the servant brought some coconuts to be offered to Krishna, and then they were cooled and they were clipped and they were ready to be offered to Lord Krishna. And then there was some delay in offering. So the servant, what he did was stood at the doorstep, and with his one hand he touched the door, the ceiling of the door. And as soon as Raghava Pandit saw that, he immediately asked the servant to discard all those coconuts, because he said, well, you touched the door, and then the door has dust from the food dust from people who are passing through the door, and then you touch the coconut. So those coconuts now are contaminated. So this is the standard of acquiring bhoga. When you see that
it's a meditation.
It's a meditation.
It's a meditation. And of course, this is a very elevated state of consciousness. But, there is also,
And then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati says that it's not that Raghava Pandit was like a clean freak or something. But it was his deep desire to offer the best. I guess the principle is offering the best to Lord Krishna.
What captured my attention was, reading, when Lord Chaitanya accepts Prasadam, when Advaitacharya is distributing the Prasadam to Lord Chaitanya in Shantipur. And I was just really blown over, of course, by the list of different food items that he offered. But what was really, really amazing was the way that the food was presented. And, it was to the point where it was offered in these bifurcated banana leaves. Unbifurcated banana leaves. And those banana leaves did not just come from any ordinary banana tree, but from a banana tree that had 32 bunches of bananas. And so, when I read that, I was just really struck that, the attention to detail in both the acquiring of bhoga as well as the distribution. Of course, we understand, we say sometimes Krishna lies in the details. But what really, what was pertinent for me was that, this distribution of rasa aswad, this distribution of rasa means taking that extra time and that extra effort to make sure that the container in which it is being distributed is also of importance and significance. And that to me, like as someone that, likes to share Krishna consciousness, I was just thinking that how important it is for me, for us to think very carefully in a very detailed way of how we can make this presentation of this rasa, of this bhakti rasa, very attractive and very thoughtful.
According to time, place.
According to time, place, and also making it very beautiful. And that was Prabhupada's mood, is a cultural conquest, right? And we have so much of culture in terms of, this whole bhakti tradition has such rich culture of presentation, of cooking, of ingredients, of music, of everything, right? It's all there. And so when we take that time to think and reflect on how we can make this presentation very beautiful, then it becomes that much more tasty.
And it becomes tastier for Krishna, because Krishna is the ultimate person who is doing that rasa sodana. So all Krishna, the party who is receiving it, and ourselves, all three of us can exchange that, experience that rasa. And then CC describes in great detail about the rasa exchange during honoring or accepting prasadam, and the famous pastime of Kaliya Krishnadas, who was a devotee in Bengal, and he was dedicated to honoring prasadam from devotees. So he'd take bhoga to the houses of devotees, even devotees who are just begun, and he was into Krishna consciousness for his whole life. But he would honor even the neophyte devotees as his masters, and he would take bhoga to them and say, please accept this. And when they would eat, when he would offer that bhoga and accept that prasad, and then you would throw their remnants, and Kaliya Krishnadas would hide. He would first of all ask for the remnants, and if they refused, then they would hide behind bushes outside their homes, and then he would grab those remnants and lick them, and he would dance in ecstasy. And because of which he received special mercy from Lord Chaitanya.
Yeah. And here is the last one, which is the preparation and the cooking. And
before we go there, so in that section, Kaviraj Goswami says that Kaliya Krishnadas received this special mercy from Lord Chaitanya. He could drink the water from the feet of Lord Chaitanya 3 times because he had faith in these 3 things. One was the dust from the feet of a devotee, and so he'd regularly rub his body with the dust from the feet of devotees. and he had complete faith in the remnants, food left by the devotees or eaten by the devotees. And the third thing was the water that has touched the feet of the devotee. So because of honoring these three things, all three are prasad.
Yeah. And then here is another one where devotees go through such great length to cook for Krishna, and they cook in a mood, and like Prabhupada says that Mother Yashoda thinks that if I don't feed Krishna, then Krishna will die, right? So there is the story of Nandi Mata, who was a great devotee from Orissa, from Jagannath Puri, and she had a particular mood in which she would see Krishna as her little boy. And she was very concerned, as mothers generally are, when they see their sons or their daughters eating very rich, spicy food, or like sweets, or like very like oily fried food. And so she was very, very concerned. And so she thought that, he should not be eating like this all the time. But she knew that there was no point, telling him not to eat. And so she thought, what can I do? And so she thought, why don't I prepare some bitter food stuff? Because in Ayurveda, if you eat bitter, then your digestion actually improves. And so what she would, but then the thing is that in Jagannath Puri temple, you're not allowed to bring food stuff from outside. But because her heart was so drenched in this mood of motherly love, so she actually cooked like bitter food stuff, and she hid it in her sari, and then she would bring it, and then she would tell Krishna that, why don't you're always eating these sweets, you need to take good care of yourself. So here I got some bitter food, why don't you accept it? And then she would do this every single day. One day, the guard, the person who was the main, in charge, he saw that she was carrying something in her sari, and so he approached her and said, "What are you carrying?" And then he saw that there was some food stuff, and she said, "No, this is for my son. This is for my son who's always eating fried food and sweets, and he needs to eat this bitter food." And then eventually they figured out that she was bringing it for Krishna, and so they were very, very angry, and so they took her container and they just threw it away.
And then, so Nandi Mata was very kind of sad and discouraged, and she went back home. She fasted for the whole day and then praying to Krishna. And that night, the king, he had a dream where Lord Jagannath appeared to him, and he chastised him, right?
Yeah. So so first Lord Krishna came back to Nandi Mata and said that, how come you're not bringing me my bitter food anymore? I'm eating all this and I'm going to have indigestion. So Nandi Mata said, what can I do? I got it, but then, your guards didn't allow me. I tried. So Krishna tells Nandi Mata, don't worry, you come back again tomorrow and you bring it. And then Krishna also appears in the dream of the king as well as the guard. And he says that, how dare you? Like, how dare you? Like, she was cooking for me and she was bringing me all this, bitter stuff, and she was my mother. So then when they realized, they went to Nandi Mata and they said, we're so sorry for treating you so badly, but please do cook for Krishna. He loves the food that you're cooking. And so that's how she, that became like a regular thing where she would cook these bitter preparation for Krishna. So these things are sometimes beyond, just like Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, these things are beyond the understanding of the rationalist or our intellectual, our ability to capture this using our intellect. This exchange of rasa between Krishna and his devotees is something that is very intimate and it's very confidential. At the same time, this is the amazing part about Lord Chaitanya's mercy, which Prabhupada brought all over and distributed this all over the world, that thing which is so esoteric and so intimate and so confidential, the gopis, like we were talking earlier, the gopis actually hanker for the nectar of Krishna's lips. That has been made available for every person, regardless of where they come from or what their qualifications are or not.
Yeah, typically, in order for the soul to rise from the Annamaya consciousness to Ananda Maya consciousness, it may take many, many lifetimes. Right? Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that Onam Janmanamanti Jnanamanman Prapadyate, that it may take many, many lifetimes, but that process has been cut short, like to nothing, by just accepting prasadam. One immediately gets the benefit of rising to the highest level of consciousness very shortly, just by honoring prasadam.
And there is this very, very amazing story of this stewardess, right? When one time Prabhupada was flying to Venezuela, and I think it's a story that was narrated by Shuddha Kirti Prabhu, and I don't think they packed anything for the flight, but there was this lady who packed some puffed rice for Prabhupada. And so when Prabhupada got on the flight, he felt hungry, and so he asked the devotees, like, is there anything? And the devotee said, yes, Prabhupada, we have some puffed rice. And Prabhupada said, bring it, you know. And so then Prabhupada started eating, and he ate half of it, and then he said, now you can take the rest. So there were 2 or 3 devotees there, and so they opened up. This was like wrapped up in a foil paper. So they opened it up and they started eating. And there was a stewardess who was walking past Prabhupada. And so she looked at it and she was immediately attracted to it. Without knowing, without understanding, without even really asking for it, she just like put her hand there in that puffed rice container, and she took a handful and she just ate it. And she said, oh, this is so good. And then she wanted to serve Prabhupada, and she said, can I bring something? And I think she brought a platter of fruits for Prabhupada. Anyways, that was it. She got some remnants of a great devotee and the remnants of Krishna, Prasadam. Now, many years later, Shuddhakirti Prabhu was giving a class. I think this was, in Brazil, if I remember. And when he told this story, then there was a brahmachari who was sitting there, and he said, oh, actually, there's a part 2 to this story. And the part 2 is that they'd gone out on book distribution, and they were going door to door. And when they knocked on this one door, and this lady saw the devotees on the door, she invited them in, and they saw that she had Prabhupada's books, and she had an altar, and so they were very surprised, and they said, oh, you're a devotee. And she said, yeah, I was the stewardess that, I was flying on this plane, and then she got this opportunity to accept this, this puffed rice that Prabhupada had eaten. And so just by accepting those remnants, that prasadam, she got this, this great opportunity to, her heart just opened up.
And she immediately jumped from
Ananda Maya to Ananda Maya. So, this is the mystery of this great prasadam, which literally means mercy of Krishna, and which is infused with Krishna's heart, which is infused with Krishna's taste. And just like when you eat food, when someone has when someone is sick, you eat that, you get infected. So right now we are so afraid of this coronavirus infection, but this is the kind of infection that we're looking for, right? To be infected by this love that is that we can get by eating food that has been touched by Krishna's lips.
And we're listening to a lecture by Ananda Maya, where he says that Prasadam is not just Krishna's mercy, but he says this is the most appreciable form of Krishna that we can immediately associate with. Because not everybody may have attraction for the books, or reading the books, or maybe coming to the temple, appreciating the deity form. But everybody can appreciate Prasadam because of its taste and fragrance and everything else. So Krishna appears, if he appeared in the form, like even Arjuna could not handle the universal form of Krishna. But Krishna appears in this Prasadam form, so that everybody, even an animal or a child or an adult, old person, everybody can appreciate Krishna and make Krishna their own. So thank you all for listening, and I'd like to thank Anuradha Prabhu.
I think she'll be back soon. We have 7 minutes. Maybe we can read some of the comments, or if someone has any question, we could also take that. So Shuchi, Shama Bhakti, it's nice to hear your comment. You just read about rasa and was relishing this concept of rasa. Maharaja once instructed me in understanding taking prasadam as downloading Krishna.
That's beautiful.
That's very nice. Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki jai. Yeah, love goes beyond reason and rationale. That's true, right? I mean, we try to grab Krishna using our mind and our intelligence, right? But we always fail. It's beyond adokshaja, right? It's beyond. We don't question all this because Srila Prabhupada explained the process so nicely. Let's go on. This is the last one, right? Yeah, I agree with you, Kevalya Sundari. Made me more grateful for prasadam and the ability to taste and smell. It's true, we had pneumonia earlier last year, and for months, all I could taste was this bitter taste in my mouth. And we can be so grateful for this opportunity to receive this prasadam. And just like we were talking about the impersonalist earlier on, that actually there is this very nice story which we were earlier thinking of sharing with you. It's a long story about Vidarbhasuta Swami, right? And yeah, it's too long. But there are, we are blessed in the Bhakti tradition to be able to get like all kinds of food offerings, which are so many. I mean, who can think of 108 offerings and 56 offerings?
In some places, they even make 1,008 offerings to Lord Jagannath or Viraj. And I guess Krishna he's a connoisseur of good food. He likes to enjoy, and therefore anybody can make any preparation for him and offer with love.
Thank you, Kevala Sundari, for your kind comment. So we'll just wait here. We are, 5 minutes, I guess, early, and I think we have to just wait for Anuradha to come. And there she is.
To the rescue.
I'm really here. Yeah, that was beautiful. I've been putting some of the comments on the screen. I don't know if you were able to see it.
Where is that?
Well, you should just be able to look at your screen, and there's some.
Yes, we did see. Yeah, we saw that. Yes.
Yeah, that's so fantastic. Yeah, this is so great. Someone just wrote that she was just reading about rasa and relishing this concept of rasa, and seeing you talk about it. Yeah, that was such a fabulous conversation. It just I listened to a lot of your Zoom classes, and I just love the way the two of you interacted. You have such a tangible feeling for the Shastra and explaining it. So I'm so grateful. Is there any last words that you'd like to share as an audience, or?
Well, I have to say this, Anuradha, that we're so grateful to you for, for, of course, giving us the opportunity, but for giving us this topic. I have to say this, and this is my honest confession here, that I've always taken Prasadam, I think, to a large extent. Like, I think I've taken it for granted. And just the last week of just meditating on Prasadam and going deeper into it has really deepened my own appreciation for it. And, I'm just so grateful for that.
Yeah, I guess we are the greatest beneficiary of this.
Well, that's great. I just feel like that is just how Bhakti works, right? Or, it's just like you think you're getting something out of it, but the person gets something more out of it. It's like this constant competition.
Yeah, I've never thought of Prasadam as much as we have thought about it, right? The last one has just been so amazing. And I remember, just one last thing, I remember that we got a chance to watch Yamuna. This was early on in our Krishna consciousness. We went to Alachua, and we didn't really know Yamuna Devi that well at that time. But I remember that we sat with her and we saw her honor Prasadam. And that samskara is etched in my heart. Like the way she sat and sang the samsara, the Sharira Vidyajal prayer. So, it's
just
something.
The way she would pick up prasadam from the plate and put it in her mouth, and everything was an education.
So we were thinking about that. So just wanted to share that.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much, the two of you. To our viewers, Lokadhyaksa and Vidarbha, they run a Zoom class. Maybe you can just say a little bit about when those are and where they can find you.
Yeah. Where can they find us?
Facebook?
Zoom into Facebook, Zoom into Self. I'm also available on my own Facebook page, Vidarbhasuta. So I'm there, and we do have classes where we teach the Bhagavad Gita. We're also doing a daily mantra meditation, which is
7:30 p.m. Eastern. The Zoom details you can find that on our Facebook page. And then once a week we also teach the Bhagavad Gita from like a modern lens.
Yeah.
So that Sunday is 8 p.m.
Okay, I'm trying to just show. So is that the name of your Facebook page? Is it just Vidarbhasuta?
We'll put the link. Yeah, it's Vidarbhasuta. I'll just put the link there.
Can we type in the comments, or?
You can type in the comments as well, and that will be there, and people can even see it. See it after.
And then, where do you type though?
You just type on the comments. Go to the right-hand side, and you see the comments on the right-hand side.
Oh, you go up.
Yeah, and then you just should see a part that you can make a comment. Do you see that?
Yeah.
I don't see. I'll just type it in the private chat.
And then you can put it in there.
Good idea. And I can take it off there. Okay, Zoom. Oh, that's cute. Zoom into self. That's your Facebook page.
Yeah,
Okay,
and also Vidarbha. I think my personal page is also a good idea. Vidarbha Agarwal. Yeah. So yeah, you can find me there and send us a message, and we'd love to connect with you. And again, thank you so much, Anuradha.
Thank you, Anuradha, and thank you for the whole GBC SPT
Initiative.
team. This is we have been watching the lectures, and it's life giving to organize these lectures with so many speakers, and then it's thank you all from the bottom of our heart. Excellent
Thank you
service.
so much. So to our viewers, please go ahead and follow us on Facebook. Visit our website, gbcspt.com. Share with others. Subscribe to our mailing list where you won't miss a single notification from us. Also, you can hit the notification button on the YouTube channel as well as on the Facebook page to get notified. But we have this 5-week program that we started on Advaitacharya's appearance day, leading up to Gaur Purnima, touching on all subjects: theology, philosophy, rasa, leela, prasadam, recipes, cooking, all kinds of things. So there's something for everyone. So please, also parikrama. We have this great parikrama series. So you're not even going to feel like you're in a pandemic climate right now. That you can deep and immerse yourself in the nectar of Chaitanya Charitamrita, and also encouraging people that to take this up in the 125th anniversary of Srila Prabhupada's birth, that you take up the Chaitanya Charitamrita. We have all heard how much Prabhupada put and how he pushed the devotees to finish this. So we're going to be, listening to stories of how that was finished, from hearing from the artists, the publishers, etc., that whole process. So that is our hope, that everyone is inspired to read the Chaitanya Charitamrita, to distribute the Chaitanya Charitamrita, to speak from the Chaitanya Charitamrita like you are doing. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone, especially Vidarbha. Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Just go.